Nintendo, as of is it March 2023, are announcing they're closing the eShops for both 3DS and Wii U. They and have also said they have no plans to offer this classic content in other ways.
That one was a real weird thing. Like they are like they're releasing heads. They will. There's the rumor for weeks and months now that they're like Game Boy games will be next to Nintendo Online. Like they will be releasing a lot of this.
Also, when you might remember back in the day, Garrett, when Nintendo Switch was codenamed Project NX, one of the very first things we heard about it after it's a handheld console that you can also connect to your TV, which was absolutely bang on, was GameCube Virtual Console. That was one of the first things I remember hearing about it, and it was the same source of all the other leaks that was bang on about the Switch. Because I even remember joking at the time, it's like, oh, they're just skipping right past N64. They had kind of just started doing some N64 games on Wii U, and they were like, and we're done. So yeah, like I think it's one of those things where maybe in their heads they thought people won't ask for it if we say we're not going to do it. Look, we've seen this kind of stuff before. Legacy platforms, and it's always, if you're really, really trying hard to see it from their side of things, which I do not, I must reiterate, they're like, oh, the cost of keeping these servers, blah, 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 blah. But it is the big problem with the all digital future is that even if you own your games, you don't really own your games. That eventually there will be no way for you to restore these purchases if something should happen now to your Wii U and you wanted to get some old Wii U games, or if you're somebody who is like an archiver or likes to have collections of these things, it's just become incredibly difficult for you to do so. It has definitely and rightfully responded, and people just going, well, Nintendo have basically just told you it's A-okay to start pirating this stuff now.
And they shut down the Wii already, which was what, in 2019-20 or something ish, when they turned off the Wii store. So this isn't the first time they've done this. And like there is always going to be that tension where Nintendo are a company with a profit motive at the end of the day. So there will always come a point with every single digital storefront, every single service they offer, where the cost of keeping it online is greater than the cost of the benefit it comes in, than any revenue it generates.
Yeah, because like you said, at the end of the day, these are companies and corporations, and the history is the history argument is not one that will hold water.
And you could make the argument, it's like, really, compared to how much Nintendo makes, how much would it cost them to keep these things online? Like, the servers are probably slightly more expensive than you think, but in the grand scheme of the money Nintendo are making, it's pittance.
Yeah. And it's also a thing where, like, a lot of these digital thing, you make a digital purchase, and as tradition was, you make a physical purchase of a game, and unless that game is physically destroyed, you have possession of that content that you have bought into perpetuity.
Or unless you lose it in your office and don't try and find it again, right, Dave?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, unless you are so indifferent it disappears into the void. So now one of the things that is going to give people pause with embracing this digital future that all the platform holders want us to go on to is that now essentially you're paying the same money you were for previous generation games, if not higher in like literal terms, if not real income terms. You're paying higher numbers now with the boost up to $80.
When I was buying Horizon, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I was one of the people who got ripped off buying Horizon. Here's a little Horizon PSA: buy the PS4 version, which is cheaper, and you can get a free upgrade to the PS5 version instead of buying the more expensive PS5 version. Don't be a dumbass rube like me who bought the more expensive PS5 version.
Yeah. As I was saying earlier, the only reason to do that is if you decide to get it physically, because I imagine the PS5 version will lose value at a much slower rate to trade back in than the PS4 one. Because there's still a lot of people. I was listening to a completely non-video game related podcast. I was listening to Knowledge Fight, and they opened it up by laughing about how, we're super psyched to play Forbidden West, but a year plus later, neither of us can find a fucking PS5. So
that's mad, isn't it? That some
Yeah.
people are still struggling that.
yeah. But yeah, look, it's you're dead right, Garrett, that like we're not going to be able to make these arguments with. It's definitely wrong what they're doing, but also like if you're being really cold and businesslike about it, if you were Joe Nintendo, you're probably going to make the same call because you don't give a shit about history, you give a shit about bottom line.
There comes a point where this will always happen. Eventually. Like, Nintendo are never going to leave the 3DS eShop servers up in perpetuity. So it is a matter of when, not if. Like, when you think 50 years down the line when Nintendo, if they're still in business, have like, 5 or 6 more console generations, they're hardly going to be supporting their original digital ones. Like, they are going to shut them all down eventually. It is a matter of... I do find some of the outrage that you see a little disingenuous, because if people did care that much about these games, enough people would be buying them to sustain these ecosystems, and that's clearly not happening.
Yeah.
I'd love to know how many daily active users the Wii U has at the moment.
One of the things that killed the Wii U is that even at its peak, fuck all people.
And that's what killed the Virtual Console, because no one bought it on Wii U, and like they would have sold a shit ton of Virtual Console games on the Switch. But I assume they made the decision that nobody bought them on Wii U, so no one wants them.
Yeah. And like, here's the other thing. Like, one of the things on this that's going to be interesting going forward is, so like Sony, for example, this generation, they got rid of the old store to buy old stuff, but you are, for the last generation, still able to download the PS4 version of all your games onto PS5. So is that the model going forward, that maybe you can't buy games you didn't have before, but we will facilitate you being able to restore old purposes to do legacy stuff that way? Look, like you said, Garrett, every time one of these consoles reaches end of life, this is going to be a thing that comes up. And, you know, with their unwillingness generally to embrace the future and technology, I would not bet on Nintendo being the first ones to figure out the solution.
Well, I would hope that the solution is Switch Online, right?
Yeah, you would think. And the thing is, they also should be the ones scraping most to solve this, because they're also the one of the 3 platform holders that has the most history and continues to profit off its own legacy as well.
And also, their old properties seem to hold their value longer than any other video games. Like, if you go back, you would still have to pay full price, probably, for a lot of Nintendo games that have been out for like 4 or 5 years.
I guess cynically, you could also argue that one of the reasons they hold their value is because every couple of years they make you buy Super Mario World again on a different console, so having that original cartridge is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, it would just be nice if, like, you can get all of the PS4 games on PS5, right?
Well, didn't they say something like 90% of them or something?
Yeah, like, you'd want to be going real obscure, because I have not seen a purchase I ever made on PS4 that isn't on my PS5
I'd almost be interested
collection.
to dig into what is the game you can't get on PS5.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Am I right, brothers?
It's silver.
It's a travesty.
Unfortunately for you. Yeah. I remember, you get on PS3, you could get PS1 and PS2 games, like if you had the right version of the PS3. Yeah. And I remember I downloaded Command and Conquer Red Alert Retaliation, which was like the PlayStation 1 port of like Red Alert 1 and 2 from PC. And for some reason, that was the one thing they decided of all the old PS1 games that you could access on PS3. They were going to take off the store, and then I couldn't re-download it and access it, and I was absolutely heartbroken. And I've never seen that game commercially available to download again, and that just makes me really sad. So maybe I don't know, maybe Nintendo can buy the rights to that.
And then release it on 3DS
you
and
laugh,
then bury it forever.
But then, holy shit, like, they're buying, like, Earthbound and weird properties up, like, that they've got access to from the 90s to have on their console from their Direct the other day. So why not Command and Conquer Red Alert Retaliation?